Okay, so a very good evening to everyone. Today's class is going to be about Pirkei Avot. It's really this period between Pesach and Shavuot. We have this beautiful opportunity, which, funnily enough, the Ashkenazim actually have the custom to read Pirkei Avot throughout the summer months. Hi, Dan. Good to see you. Welcome back. And Refuah Shlema. So the Ashkenazim actually have the opportunity to go through Pirkei Avot throughout the summer months. We Sfaradim, we particularly have the custom to read Pirkei Avot between Pesach and Shavuot, which kind of really fits beautifully because there are 5 chapters of Pirkei Avot, and there are 6 weeks always between Pesach and Shavuot. So what the Chachamim or the Mishnah did, they actually put Brightot together, which kind of makes up the last and final chapter of Pirkei Avot, and that really kind of gives us ample opportunity to study and to take home a couple of messages. Now, anybody who's looked through...
You're saying the Ashkenazim do not have this custom?
They do it throughout the summer months, not only Pesach and Shavuot.
Well, thank you.
So for us, it's like kind of a big deal to at least grab onto this opportunity during these months, because anybody who's even peeked into Pirkei Avot for 5 minutes, Ethics of the Fathers, knows that the wisdom that lies therein is just kind of unbelievable, and just the life lessons which a person can learn from Pirkei Avot, it's just really, it's so beautiful that we have such a beautiful book which we can study from, and it's like timeless wisdom. So just want to kind of go through a little bit together with you, just to see if there's something small that we could take out from today. But before we turn to Pirkei Avot, I do want to mention this week is Lag BaOmer. Tomorrow night, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll be celebrating. Those who have the opportunity to come to the barbecue tomorrow, please join us in our backyard, 1027 West 27. Really, it's an opportune time to get together again. It's been quite a while since we got together because of COVID.
Do we have a fallback position in case of rain?
We are working on it. So we will.
Sorry?
We are working on it, and we'll let you know if there's necessity. So what is Lag BaOmer about? We know the students' famous idea, one of the celebrations behind Lag BaOmer is based on the Gemara in Yevamot. The Gemara in Yevamot, Samach Bet Amud Aleph, 62a, speaks about the students of Rabbi Akiva, the students of Rabbi Akiva who passed away during the Pesach Ad Atzeret, between Pesach and Shavuot. We have a tradition that death of the students of Rabbi Akiva began between Pesach and Shavuot and ended on Lag BaOmer, which is cause for celebration. Exactly why, I spoke a little bit about Shabbat. On Shabbat, why it actually is a cause of celebration. If 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva passed away, well, guess what? The Gemara says, "V'haya ha'olam shamim." The world was, empty, was desolate. There was void from Torah until he went to the 5 students, Shebadarom, one of them being Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Ben Ish Chai famously says that people celebrate Meron, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, on Lag BaOmer, but really it's the time where Rabbi Akiva gave ordination and kind of reset the track from 5 students on Lag BaOmer, which means the celebration of Lag BaOmer is not specifically or uniquely for Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, but also for Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilai, for Rabbi Meir Balanes, and all the other 5 rabbis who are involved in this, and obviously all the more so Rabbi Akiva himself. Anybody who's been to Tiberia, Tzfat, and all these places, just an incredible opportunity to go see and visit those holy.
But wasn't it another rabbi that gave them smicha, Rabbi Yehuda ben Bama, something like that? No.
I'm not aware of it.
Okay. So okay.
It's Rabbi Akiva. Was the day Rabbi Akiva kind of gave over the Torah to these students, and they, as a result of them, Torah came forward. In fact, the Gemara actually says in the Mishnah So Mishnayot don't always have names put to them. So, for example, when the Mishnah says Rabbi Meir says, so which Rabbi Meir is it? There's lots of Rabbi Meirs throughout the Tanaim period. And the Mishnah, the Gemara says that Stam Rabbi Meir, when you say just Rabbi Meir alone, it means Rabbi Meir Balnes, this student. Stam Rabbi Shimon, you don't know who it is? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Stam Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilai. These are specifically these students. So, and all, says the Gemara, the Kulam Aliba de Rabbi Akiva. And all of them are going according to the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, who was their Rebbe, who was their rabbi, who essentially disseminated Torah to the masses as a result of this kind of world crisis where the Torah was kind of left, so alone. There was no Torah in the world. And these 5 students kind of continued with that path to the Torah we have today, which kind of, I elaborate a little bit about this in Shabbat during the weekly class before Mincha, and it's just incredible about Rabbi Akiva himself. That first of all, what you can make out of, nothing. He had nothing, but he didn't give up. Sometimes a person goes through tragedy, and this is not just tragedy. This is 24,000 students. You do the math. If it's 33 days, 24,000 students, approximately 700 and something funerals a day. And yet,
those who say it was from iron poisoning, the 24,000 students were died from the poisoning of iron, an allusion to the Bar Kokhba fighting. No.
The Gemara says they died a very specific death, mitat azkara, which is a very severe form of a choking. Basically, it kind of covers the throat area. Very, very severe form of death. But this is like, he didn't, despite all what happened, he persevered. He found new students, and Torah today is what we have because of that perseverance, which is a life lesson in itself about how a person goes through tragedy and a person goes through whatever they've been through, however many the hardships and difficulties, and to swing back and to bounce back and never give up. And it's such a chizuk for all of us. We give out every reason to say, enough, I'm done. 24,000 funerals. I can't do this anymore. I invested my whole life in this. Again, that's one piece. But what I want to focus on today is the Gemara says that the reason why these 24,000 students died was famous Gemara, mipnei shelo nahagu kavod ze lachem. The sin of these students, their shortcoming was shelo nahagu kavod ze lachem. They didn't show respect for one another. And the obvious question is, all right, didn't show respect for another. Okay, all right, it's not a nice thing, maybe not commendable, but is that chayav mitah? They're guilty of a crime which deserves capital punishment. Like, come on, like what's going on over here? Why these 24,000 students died? Because of this seemingly fallible shortcoming. What's interesting to note is, if you look at the Midrash has a bit of a different story. Midrash quotes exactly the same story, the students of Rabbi Akiva, 24,000, Rabbi Akiva, 5 students, and all the rest of it, has a bit of a different line as to what the problem was. The Midrash says, Velama, why did they die? Mipnei she'enehem tzarot zeh bazeh. Because they were envious of each other. They were jealous of one another. And the question is, so which one is it? Is it because they were jealous? Or is it because they were not showing respect to one another? And Reb Chaim Friedlander was a mashgiach in Shivat Ponovich, those who've been to Bnei Brak, seen the big golden Italian, beautiful Aron HaKodesh. He wrote a book called Siftei Chaim, and it's a very beautiful Musar book, and he explains it as follows. He says there's a Gemara and there's a Midrash, they're not arguing. The Gemara is speaking about the final action, the manifestation in life, how this kind of came across. How is that? They didn't actually show respect to one another. But the Midrash is looking for the root cause. What is the root cause why they didn't respect each other? Says the Midrash, you know why? Because they didn't treat each other with respect. What is that? Why didn't they treat each other with respect? Well, there's many reasons why people don't treat each other with respect. Well, for one, these people were Talmidei Chachamim, supposedly. They were students of Rebbe Akiva. Just to be called a student of Rebbe Akiva, you have to be a high level. So there's many reasons why a person wouldn't respect somebody else. I mean, even the fact that a person doesn't value the Torah is enough a reason why a person shouldn't show respect to someone else. So what does the Midrash say? The Midrash says because they were envious of each other. What's the underlying root cause? Says the Midrash, they viewed one another as a competitor. They viewed one another as it's going to take away from my own, what's due to me, from my own kavod, from my own respect. And if I treat you with respect, then I'll lose out. Says the Midrash, the reason why they didn't treat each other with respect is because really they were jealous of one another. They were jealous, they were worried that it's going to take away if I show that other person respect. All right. So we have a Gemara as to what the manifestation was. We have a Midrash, which kind of explains to what the root cause was. But the question which, it begs the question. But why chayav mitah? They have to die as a result of this. Where does it say in the Torah that if you don't show respect to one another or you're jealous about somebody else, boom. And they died the most severe death. What's going on? The very famous Rosh Yeshiva, many of you probably heard of, Lakewood Yeshiva, BMG in Lakewood, the biggest yeshiva in the world, biggest yeshiva in America, like 6,000-7,000 students. And the Rosh Yeshiva, who was really the pioneer of that yeshiva, was someone by the name of Rabbi Aaron Kotler, famous rabbi, really kind of put America on the map for Torah Jewry. And he says something so fundamental. He says, these people, as we mentioned before, were going to be the transmitters of Torah. These are the people who are going to be the Mosrei HaTorah. Says Rabbi Aaron Kotler. True Torah needs to be accompanied by what Mishnah at the end of Pirkei Avot says, by the Memchet Kinyanei HaTorah, the 48 characteristics which define what a Torah scholar is supposed to be. Certain midot, certain character traits which a person has to develop and work on consistently. If a person doesn't have that, it's better to remove them from this world. Says the Gemara, V'haya ha'olam shamem. The world was going to be desolate, was desolate. Why? Because if you're going to transmit the Torah and you're not a vessel worthy of transmitting the Torah, then the Torah is going to become a warped Torah. You know how dangerous that is? Example I always give, if a person's walking in the street and knocks someone over, bumps into someone, what's the damage? All right, sorry. Person's riding a bike, walks into someone, drives into someone, it's a little bit worse. Sore a knee. Person's driving a car, they say the difference between driving 25 and 30 can be fatal. Person's driving at 70, it's the end of the road. What happens if a person's driving at F-16 and he veers off a tiny bit? It's just disaster. A person who is supposed to distill the Torah and transmit it to future generations and is warped in his midot, in his or her character traits, God said, I'd rather not have such a Torah in this world. Which really brings that home. Obviously, it leaves some questions unanswered. I'm not going to go into exactly the subtleties of, how could it be and how could they have been like that. These are the students of Rebbe Akiva, who Rebbe Akiva was the famous one who said, Zeh klal gadol b'Torah, v'ahavta re'ach kamocha, zeh klal gadol b'Torah. Love your fellow like your friend, like yourself. That is the greatest virtue of the Torah. So how could his very own students not live by that? So simply put, you can answer, well, this is what he said after resulting the deaths of 24,000. But I know that the Baba Rebbe asked, he said he proves from somewhere this actually happened before. If that's the case, how could his very own students not live by that? So there's many other questions kind of, surrounding this whole Gemara and this whole piece. But what we need for today is that what we see from this Gemara is that the foundation of Torah is to have midot tovot, is to have good character traits. A person who doesn't have that cannot be transmitting Torah. That's not real Torah. Not only that, Torah is not, midot tovot is not secondary value. It's the foundation. Without that, this is not what we call Torah. Which is a very powerful concept. They say, certain rabbi in Israel, when Moshe Feinstein was one of the great rabbis in America, he was, you look at his Sfarim, his books, Dibrot Moshe. It's unbelievable the amount of stuff he was able to write and accomplish in his lifetime. Not normal, any rabbi who lives in America or Canada, he hasn't, even glossed through Rav Moshe Feinstein's book, he wouldn't know where to start, because Rav Moshe Feinstein was established so many standards for the American rabbinate, which ultimately became, the gold standard for generations, until today. Rav Moshe Feinstein was what you called a Ma'ayan HaMitgaber, a wellspring of Torah. It's fascinating to note that his son, Rav David Feinstein, Reuven Feinstein, he says, as a kid, he never saw his father study. He was either answering questions or writing his books. He had no idea when he learned. But he was someone who was a Ma'ayan HaMitgaber. He was just, you would talk, and just more stuff's coming out. Just, this like this spring. It's just ongoing. And you see his books, like little tiny writing. Just unbelievable. Like, where are you putting this stuff from? And where is the source for a Moshe Feinstein to be in such a state? I'm going to turn to Mishnah in Avot, we just learned last week. Perek Bet, Mishnah Yud. Chapter 2, Mishnah 10. Pirkei Avot says, there were 5 students which Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had. We'll go through all of them. One of them being Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. Okay. He said each one, the next Mishnah explains what each one's value was. He would enumerate their praises. Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, the final one, was Kemayan HaMitgaber. He's like a spring flowing stronger and stronger. You look at the 2 Mishnahs later, Mishnah Yud Gimel, Mishnah 13. It says as follows. Amar lahem. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to them, to the 5 students, Tzu'ur ur'u ezu hi derech tova she'yidbak ba ha'adam. Go out and discern which is the proper path to which a man should cling. You give a piece of advice. What do you think is the piece of advice you should give to a person? This is what you should stick by. And you would understand that each one of these students, what they're going to say, is going to be a life-altering moment. So one by one, just read it. Although I don't want to focus on all of them, just read it. That we should just hear what they are. Eliezer Omer, Ayin Tova, a good eye. Why do you have a good eye? See somebody else from a positive perspective. Rabbi Shua Omer, Chaver Tov. Shua says a good friend. Have a good friend, change your life. Tell you when you're right, tell you when you're wrong. A good friend tells the person when they're wrong as well. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Shachen Tov. Rabbi Yossi says a good neighbor. A person can get influenced by neighbors, by people closest to him. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Haro'eh et hanolad. One who can see the future, one who can see outcomes of their deeds. To be so short-sighted. A little bit of a broader vision. Rabbi Elazar Omer, this is the one we want to use today. Lev Tov, a good heart. Amar lahem, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to his 5 students, Ro'eh ani divrei Elazar ben Arach min divrechem. I prefer the words of Rabbi Elazar ben Arach to all your words. Why? Shebichlal devarav divrechem. For your words are included in his words. A good heart is so powerful that includes a good eye, good friend, good neighbor. A person, what we see from these 2 Mishnayot is Rabbi Elazar ben Arach was a Ma'ayan HaMitkaber. He was like a spring which was flowing stronger and stronger. But what is the source for a person who is Ma'ayan HaMitkaber? What is it? You just learn, you just study so much that you can just kind of overflow, keep on overflowing? Says the Mishnah. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is telling us, you know why? Because Rabbi Elazar ben Arach is a lev tov. Someone who has a good heart, someone whose foundation is in midot tovot, then the Torah will just kind of come out from them. You know, I want to share 2 stories. One is about Reb Chaim Brisker. Reb Chaim Brisker, very famous, one of the great rabbis of the past century. And there was once a very big wedding, and there was 2 very famous families, and they asked him who should be the rabbi who's going to do the wedding. So he told them somebody called Reb Eliezer Gordon. Reb Eliezer Gordon was quite a well-known Rosh Yeshiva. But they couldn't understand, like, you know, out of all the rabbis who were there, you can imagine 2 famous families, and there were all the rabbis, all the elders, and, you know, out of all the people, he chose him. What was it? They asked him, what's going on? He said, let me tell you a story. He said, Eliezer Gordon had a yeshiva in Telz. And he sent me a letter. He said he wants me to be the Rosh Yeshiva, to take over as a senior rabbi, senior position in the yeshiva. A couple of weeks later, he writes me another letter. He didn't respond. A couple of weeks later, he wrote another letter. What was it? He said, I understand that you may feel uncomfortable taking my position as Rosh Yeshiva, or being with me as a parallel, as another Rosh Yeshiva, as a co-Rosh Yeshiva. So you know what? I'm prepared to resign from being Rosh Yeshiva. You come and you be Rosh Yeshiva. All right. A couple of weeks pass by, sends him another letter. He said, I understand that you probably feel uncomfortable that, you know, I'll be Rosh Yeshiva alongside with you. And, you know I'm the rabbi of the city. You know, I'm prepared to resign from being the rabbi of the city. You can be the Rosh Yeshiva and you're good to go. A couple of weeks later, he sends another letter. He said, you know, Rabbi, I think it's really important you come back and bring up the Torah of the city and everything. I understand also you may be uncomfortable that, you know, you're filling in my shoes. And you know that even if I'm not the rabbi of the city, but, you know, maybe I'll feel uncomfortable that I'm there. I'm prepared to resign from my post and to leave the city. Just please come. Says Reb Chaim Brisker, that is someone who's a Gadol B'Yisrael. That's the leader of Klal Yisrael. Do you know why? Because nothing else bothers him. He's prepared to resign all his positions, let go of everything for one reason. He wants it to be more Torah, because he wants Kevod Shem Shamayim. He just wants to benefit Klal Yisrael, Bnei Yisrael, the Jewish people, to have, you know, there should be more godliness in the world. That is someone with a lev tov. Someone with a lev tov, someone who's prepared to work on himself and to give up everything. Said there should be more greatness in the world. That is someone who could be a tremendous chacham. That is someone who could be a person who embodies Torah. You know, the Talmud brings about Moshe Rabbeinu, and Rashi brings this over there. Moshe Rabbeinu, when he was told to go to Egypt by God at the burning bush, he complained to God. He said, listen, I've got an older brother. My older brother, Aaron HaKohen. It's inappropriate that I should take the position when my brother's going to come and he's going to feel bad. So God says to him, don't worry. Aaron HaKohen is going to come. Pasuk says, V'ra'acha v'samach belibo. He's going to see you, and I can testify, says God, that he's going to have incredible feelings of happiness for you. Says Rashi, quoting the Gemara, that's what happened, obviously. And as a result of that, Aaron HaKohen merited on their heart to wear the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol. Because such a heart who is happy for someone else, that's a heart which ultimately can wear the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol, be in that position of leadership for Israel. So just one more story. I just think it's a fascinating story. You know, there was another famous Lithuanian Rosh Yeshiva called Reb Baruch Ber. Reb Baruch Ber Lebowitz. He was a very famous. Anybody who's been to yeshiva is like, you know, it's one of the hardest books to learn in terms of very fine, detailed analytics. You know, fine tuning one word of a Rashi. It's like very, you know, high level, intensive analysis. You know, he had a daughter who he had a difficult time with getting her married off. One day, he found a suitable candidate, good guy, Bachur Yeshiva, learned and everything. All right, as in that time they had the engagement party. He was going to go back to his hometown, come back for the wedding. Before he left, what was customary in the time, wore him a hat, wore him a suit, and he wore him a gold watch. That was the custom to give a chatan at the time. Come back for the wedding. All right, he goes, send him back. A couple of weeks later, gets a package. What's the package? He opens up the package, a hat, a suit, and a gold watch, and a letter. The boy had decided to cut off the shidduch. Baruch Ber was devastated. Until he waited to look for the right guy, he couldn't find it. Devastating. Years went by, and Reb Baruch Ber gets a letter in the post. This guy was looking for position in the city, for audacity, and he asked Reb Baruch Ber, the senior rabbi of the city, can you write me a letter of recommendation? Baruch Ber sits down, writes a letter, writes things, long letter recommendation, you know, talking about all the different, character traits, all the reasons why he wanted him as a son-in-law. Then something very uncharacteristic, out of character. He called 3 guys from the yeshiva. He said, I want you to read this letter and tell me what you think I think of this guy. Because I'm worried because of my personal, what happened to me with my daughter, I may not write exactly, it may come through in the writing. This was Reb Baruch Ber. This is someone who is a Ma'ayan Mitkaber. They use his books to yeshiva till today. This is someone who's got such good midot that he's prepared to overlook his own stuff in order to be able to see the good in somebody else. That is someone who can personify the Torah. The students of Rabbi Akiva were people who were supposed to embody this, and they were going to be the transmitters of Torah. And because they weren't able, because lo nagu kavod ze lachem, and they were jealous of each other, they couldn't see the goodness in one another. The Torah said, the Gemara says, it would be better a world without that. It's a mind-boggling idea. You need to have a lev tov. You need to have that understanding. This jealousy is, this competitiveness doesn't work because you can't transmit Torah like that. You need to have a good heart, not a bad eye. So the question is, people have jealousy. So how do you overcome it? What's the deal? What's the secret of overcoming jealousy? So they once asked Rabbi Aaron Leib Steinman, I had the merit to see, passed away a couple of years ago, with 100 and something. And they asked him, how does a person overcome jealousy? This is very simple. Just don't look at other people. Focus inward. Focus on yourself. Not about judging other people. You always we're looking at everybody else. Just think about yourself. Worry about working yourself. You won't have any problems with jealousy. They also asked Reb Chaim Friedlander, the rabbi I mentioned before, and he said something opposite. He said, strengthen your emunah. Why? If you strengthen your faith, you'll understand why you're jealous. You're jealous. You think, well, I should have that house. I should have that car. I should have that quality that person has. Why am I different? Why was I born to this family? The person that has emunah, real faith, to appreciate that God put you in this position, in the world at this time, with this family, in this current state, then a person wouldn't worry about all this stuff. Wouldn't have to worry about jealousy. So if a person jealous, ultimately, it's a lack of, to a degree, of emunah, faith. You think maybe, you could have played, put the players in a different way, better than God. Which is kind of fascinating, because these two rabbis saying opposite things, right? One rabbi says, don't look. And the other rabbi says, no, look. Just look in a positive way, in a way of emunah, with faith. But all this is, kind of negative. How do you work on jealousy is, how do you work in a state of not being jealous? It's like almost a negative state of affairs. But there's a higher level than that. That is to be positive, to have an ayin tova. What's an ayin tova? One of the rabbis said, one of the things is a person has to have is a good eye. What does it mean to have a good eye? Good eye means you can look at somebody else and you can look at them positively. Not only to look at them positively, but you can actually be happy for their accomplishments. Not only not jealous, which is kind of like a negative state, but the next level is, I'm actually happy this person is an accomplished person. I'm actually happy that you're happy. I don't want to go off point, but I think I heard today a very beautiful idea from a well-known speaker, Rabbi Wallerstein. Rabbi Wallerstein, who just passed away last week, actually, Alav Shalom. So it should be Lunish Pator. But he said something so beautiful in marriage. It kind of really fits into this. What's so beautiful is, he says, you know what a good marriage is? A good marriage is not a partnership. Because what's a partnership? Partnership is, I want this, you want this. So I'll do this, you'll do this, we'll both be happy, we'll make it work. So let's take two random examples. Husband and wife. Husband likes watching sports. Woman hates watching sports. Wife loves going shopping. Husband hates going shopping. So partnership looks like this. Husband says, I want to watch sports for 2 hours. So you know what? We'll go shopping for 2 hours. You'll have your time. And then we'll watch for 2 hours and I'll have my time. That's partnership. That's not marriage. Marriage is like this. I love you so much that you know what I'm going to do? If shopping makes you happy, I'm going to be miserable going shopping because I know at the end of the day, you're going to be happy. So I'm happy for you that you're happy. And I hate listening to sports, but I love you so much and I want you to be happy. So I'm happy when you're happy. So I'll sit through 2 hours of a miserable game of soccer or ice hockey, whatever it is. That's marriage. Marriage is not about, we'll swap. You go 2 hours, I go 2 hours, boom, let's make it work. Okay, we're good to go. No, marriage is about, I love you so much. I'm happy for you to do what you love best. A person can be a tov ayin with friends, with families, with acquaintances, with community, is to be happy for somebody else when they're happy. It drives me mad. But you know what? I'm happy for you that you're happy. So I'll sit through whatever it takes. Rabbeinu Yonah, the great Spanish medieval commentator, lived around the time of the Rambam. Maimonides, he says something fascinating. He said a person can be an oseh mitzvah, can do all the mitzvot, he can venizar me averot, and be very careful not to do any averot, any sins. Nevertheless, he can be a son'eh Hashem, can be someone who is repulsed by God, who hates God. What is that? Someone, if it bothers him, if other people are successful in Avodat Hashem, other people are also accomplished in the service of God. What does that mean? This person gets so, undone when he sees somebody else who's as accomplished as him, specifically in the areas of service of God. Why? Because that means this whole thing is just self-centered work. It's nothing to do with God. It's nothing to do with what's right in the world or bring more godliness into the world. It's about this person's self-centeredness. That's someone who is repulsed by God. Because it's never about godliness. It's about your own ego. There once a famous Hasidic rabbi called the Ohev Yisrael, the love of Israel, beautiful name. And he once gave me a class about Avraham Avinu. And they asked him, Rabbi, if you had the opportunity to exchange places, to switch places with Avraham Avinu, would you want that? Kind of taken away by the audacity of the question. Switch places with Avraham Avinu. He thought for a minute. He said, no. Rabbi, what do you mean? Avraham Avinu is so great. He said, God needs an Avraham Avinu and God needs an Ohev Yisrael. There needs to be one of them. Who cares who's doing what? As long as this both, if I can be a bit of a better person, I'm good to go. Don't have to be that person. Because when you look at the dimension of godliness in the world, and who cares if it's me, if it's you, there should be more kavod shamayim. There should be more greatness in this world. More awareness of God. Persons who are able to serve God in a really a purified way. It's a beautiful thing. It's insignificant who's doing what. Yeah, put into a hockey game. Does it matter if the guy's the goalie, if the guy's the guy in the middle, or the guy on the side, whatever? I forgot the names of the thing. But does it really matter? Which player's what? It's our team. Is our team winning or not? I heard from my Rabbi Zimmerman from London, currently in London. He said something so beautiful. He said it really touched me, this story. It's kind of the same line. He said he was once, he was a very busy rabbi. He was a rabbi in Gates at the time, he was a rabbi in the States before that. And one Erev Yom Kippur, he was so busy answering questions that he didn't have time to buy a Ner Neshama. The custom is to light a special light which lasts throughout Yom Kippur, and then you can make Havdalah on that lamp, which was kind of lit the whole Yom Kippur. So he goes and knocks on the next door neighbor. He says, can I trouble you? Can I borrow an Ner Neshama? I didn't have an opportunity to buy one today. It was so close to Yom Kippur. Can I borrow one? Sure. Goes to the house, comes back, gives him the Ner Neshama. All right, Motzei Kippur comes. Custom is you have to do Havdalah on the candle which has been lit throughout Yom Kippur. And he gets a knock on the door just after Yom Kippur. Sure enough, it's his neighbor, his next door neighbor. He said, Rabbi, do you mind if I can borrow your candle? He said, sure. I mean, what happened to yours? Like, did it go out? Like, very, very normal. These things happen. He said, I tell you the truth. I said, you know what happened? Listen, you came to my door on Erev Yom Kippur, and you asked me if I have an Ner Neshama. I figured to myself, listen, I only had one. I thought to myself, there's going to be one Ner Neshama between us. Who cares if it's my house or if it's your house? So I have another opportunity to do some chesed, do some kindness before Yom Kippur. I give it to you. I need Ner Neshama to kind of light up the love from, if I take it. That really kind of brings home this idea. If you're busy with the broader scheme of things, the grand scheme of things, better greater godliness in this world, then who cares if it's me, if it's you, if it's him, if it's her? We're all in the same picture. As long as someone gets it done, we're good to go. I'm not absolving myself from responsibility. But if you're going to do a better job than me, for sure you should do it. If we're going to do the same and I can do a chesed as a result, you should do it. Such a beautiful perspective of how we're supposed to view life. This is really what this period of Yemei Sfirat HaOmer is. Now you need to have a certain level of self-esteem to be able to have this concept of understanding the grand scheme of things. If you're always busy, like kind of, you're not full yourself, you can't fill others. That's for sure. And Avodat Hashem, it's just as important. And there's a kind of, I think it was Shal Salanti used to say, the father of the Muslim movement. He says, Oy vey, along these lines. Oy vey, if a person doesn't know his shortcomings. But oy vavoy, if a person doesn't know his strengths. You need to have a certain level of self-esteem to be able to say, you know what? I can be that Mayanam Kaber. I can have that Lev Tov to be able to look at somebody else and to be able to recognize this person can either do this better than me without taking away from me. Or this person may need it at this time, let him do it, or her do it. There's a certain value of that. You need to have that self-esteem. And that's why it's fascinating, because before we start Pirkei Avot, every time we read it, Shabbat Mincha, which is our custom, we start off with one Mishnah. Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek l'olam haba. Shneimar v'amech kulam tzadikim. That every member of Klal Yisrael has a portion in the world to come. And why do we have to start off the Mishnah with this kind of introduction every week, the same thing before we start the chapter? Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek. What's the reminder about? The answer is we're going to start reading Mishnah Avot. We're going to think about all the different character traits that we have to work on. And think, oh my gosh, I've got such a long way to go. And a person can feel deflated. If we start off, you should know. Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek. You should know. You're in. You have Gan Eden. By hook or by crook, you're in. Now let's try and work forward. Let's try and bring you up a little bit more. So let's begin with that approach. You can have an Ein Tovah. You can start and begin to recognize, you know what? I'm so happy for you. Someone got a raise in his job. I'm so happy for you. A person's going on a nice vacation. Good for you. I'm genuinely like, oh, I can't believe it. Oh, he's spending his money. Oh, he didn't pay for this, but he is paying for that. I'm genuinely happy for you. You're gonna have a good time. You came back from holiday, had a good time. I'm really, really excited for you that you're going, that you came back, that you had a refreshing opportunity. And this is this period between Pesach Shavuot, which we said that we have the custom to read Pirkei Avot, because this is Yemei Sfirat HaOmer. Not for nothing did the students of Rebbe Akiva die in this period. It's because this period between Pesach and Shavuot, well, in order to get to receiving the Torah, we have to work on Derech Eretz Kedma Torah. We have to make sure to understand, to have the Ein Tovah, to have that good eye. Not like the Talmidei Rebbe Akiva, the students of Rebbe Akiva, who lo nahagu kavod ze lazeh. They didn't recognize one another because for each of them was like, if I respect him, that means I'm going to lose out. They didn't have that emunah, they didn't have that faith. It's not about that. It's about if you're full with yourself, you're going to be able to respect one another because you appreciate that person. Because ultimately, when it's a bigger picture, it's about godliness. So who cares if it's me, if it's you? If you said nice about Torah, so I need to say it? No, it's good that you said it. Baruch Hashem, beautiful. If you asked a good question, oh, why did you ask a good question, not me? Baruch Hashem, good for him. A person's able to do that. A person can be a true vessel to be worthy of receiving the Torah and thereby be worthy of accepting the Torah and Matan Torah at Shavuot. Okay, we'll stop there.